So Ilia Topuria did an interview earlier this week saying that he is done with the 145-pound division and wants to move up to 155 pounds, and mentioned fighting people like Charles Oliveira in order to earn a title shot against the winner of Makhachev versus Tsarukian. Now, I would like Ilia Topuria to defend the belt a few times first before he makes his move to 155 pounds. However, because he's so exciting, I'm going to try and understand what he's saying right now. This is a more recent comment that he made. He's saying he will not leave the title vacant. Everything is yet to be decided. Stop celebrating because I'm not going anywhere. So he sort of came out more recently with this comment after hearing people's response to him saying that he's done at 145 and he's not going to be going there because the weight cut is too bad. We heard his coach say things like, you know, he's been struggling to make the weight cut because of how tough it is, and he's moving up to 155 pounds and will not defend the 145 pound title anymore. A bunch of people have been talking about this. A bunch of fighters have been mentioning the idea of fighting Ilia Topuria upon moving up to the next division, 155 pounds. I think there's more to do at 145. Ilia Topuria seems to say that he's conquered the featherweight division. I know that he defended it against Max Holloway. I know that he beat Alexander Volkanovski to get the belt in the first place. However, I'm looking for one more. I'd love to see a Diego Lopez matchup in March. Let's get a move on here, okay? What's the rush? Why are we trying to leave? You're not that huge for the 145-pound division, but there's more that we got to discuss in today's video. We got all of the coach's comments that he made recently as well. We've got Diego Lopez commenting on this, saying that there's a few more matchups that he needs to go through first. There's the rematch with Volkanovski, which I don't think should happen next. I'd love to see Volk fight Evloev while Lopez gets a title shot, and then the winner of Volkanovski versus Evloev can fight Ilia Topuria, and then we can talk about moving up for some kind of super fight against Islam Makhachev. But there's been more about this. He's called out Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira even responded to Ilia Topuria, so the chances of this happening are becoming a little bit more real. Okay? We've got Dustin Poirier reposting the idea of him fighting Ilia Topuria. A lot of people are wondering, what do these guys get out of this? Why would they fight Ilia? He's going to move up and he doesn't have a belt at 155. He's still number 4 pound for pound. So for a lot of these contenders at 155, that's a very, very valid win for their legacy if they can get their hands on it. Paddy Pimblett even mentioned the idea of fighting Ilia Topuria as well, which I don't think is as much of an option as the other top contenders. We have some of the reasoning. I'm going to try and understand Ilia's mindset because he's so entertaining. He deserves some level of trying to understand what he's doing here. But there's a lot to discuss. You know, Diego Lopez called out Alexander Volkanovski. What would this leave the featherweight division in? What situation would this leave the featherweight division in? I think it would be really bad for the featherweight division if Ilia Topuria were to leave. But one thing I want to say first. Ilia Topuria mentioned something this week about kodeguru or something like that. It's like a word that closely translates in the English language to code guru. At prizepicks.com, guys. It translates closely to code guru at prizepicks.com. Play $5, get $50 instantly, you guys. We're going to get back to the video in a second. Trust me, just give me a second here, guys. 45 seconds of your time. Okay, Prize Picks. Play $5, get $50 for whatever you want to do. Okay? We go to prizepicks.com. The fights are on this weekend, you guys. You can look at this. New member offer. New members, play $5, get 50 instantly. Go to prizepicks.com, click on apply, and you will be eligible for this. Okay, perhaps. I don't know what part of the world you're in, who knows. Go and find out if you want, okay, guys? And look what you can do here. You can predict more or less on a few different things. We've got fight time in minutes. We've got significant strikes. We've got takedowns. Significant strikes is the one I'll be going with, if I were to go with anything. And I would say that Ramon Taveras is probably going to land more than 59.5 significant strikes. Because if Davy Grant doesn't finish him, it's probably going to be a scrap. I don't see Davy Grant getting KO'd for the first time in his career. So I would go with him landing more than 59.5 significant strikes. And for Josephine Lindgren Knudsen, I would say that she's going to land more than 63.5 significant strikes as well. Okay? That's what I would think. So I think she lands more because, you know, women's strawweight, not too much power, high volume, likely to go to a decision. And if she does get a finish, it's probably going to get a volume TKO. So let's do that if you want. Back to the video, though, immediately. We're not wasting any more time. Here we go. Ilia Topuria's coach believes that he won't defend the 145-pound title anymore. And he's saying that he wants to target a return in May against Charles Oliveira, and if not, then fight Dustin Poirier, who is also someone they're interested in. I think this reveals a little bit more about Ilia Topuria's reasoning for moving up to 155 pounds than we first thought. It's not just about, oh, there's nothing for me at 145 anymore. It's a tough weight cut. Those are some of the reasons that they may give. I think Ilia Topuria is on a bit of a glory hunt right now, is what I would imagine is going on. He's looking at the featherweight division and he's thinking, I've already beaten Volkanovski. If I do it again, it's going to have no value to me. Okay? Some people may disagree with that, but I can tell you this right now. If Ilia KOs Volkanovski again, the narrative is going to be Volkanovski is past his prime. His chin is gone. It doesn't count as much as it does. You know what I mean? Like, there's going to be some comments about that. And then he looks at Diego Lopez and Movsar Evloev and thinks, they aren't the biggest names. They are some big names, but they're not Dustin Poirier. They're not Charles Oliveira. Ilia Topuria is a superstar, and I think he wants to have a dance partner that's going to bring an equal level of stardom to the table so he can continue to put on these huge super fights against well-known, legacy-defining wins in the 155-pound division. This isn't Ilia Topuria talking about moving up and taking on Makhachev immediately right now. He's talking about moving up and fighting a contender. He wants names on his resume. First of all, if Ilia Topuria went through Volkanovski, Holloway, and then Oliveira or Poirier, back to back to back, he would be this would be the craziest villain we have ever seen in the sport. This would be one of the craziest three fight runs of all time. It probably would be the craziest 3-fight run of all time. Volkanovski, Holloway, and then Oliveira or Poirier. Oliveira would be even better because he has wins over Poirier and is more, you know, legacy defined at the 155-pound division. I just want to see one more. You know, Diego Lopez mentions this. He says, I think Topuria has 3 good fights in the division before moving up to 155 pounds and leaving the title. And a lot of people are going to say, you know, Ilia KOs all 3 of these guys. And I do think that Ilia would beat all of these opponents. Okay, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't have to fight them. Let's not let fighters start getting away with that. Oh, he would beat that guy. We don't need to see it. This is the Joneses fan base cope about why he doesn't have to fight Aspinall, because they're somewhat worried about the idea that he might lose. So they just say, oh, he would beat them, so he doesn't have to prove that he would. Let's move on. We don't need to see it. However, I do understand it in a way. What I would do out of these 3 names is, of course, I think Lopez is the one to get the title shot, because that's the one that would bring more excitement out of the 3 of them. I know Volkanovski would bring some as well, but as I said, I think if he beats him a second time, it will just lose value. It won't be considered as good as the first time that he did it. You know what I mean? I don't want to see it again. I think people would go into that assuming that Volkanovski would just beat him. I think Lopez would be a new threat and a new danger, and I think he does have the style to do it. I think you have to have high finishing potential early in the fight to beat a guy like Ilia Topuria. I don't think you're going to be able to do what Volkanovski or Evloev would plan to do, which is to try and win a decision against him without being finished, which is going to be a very, very difficult ask. Maybe Evloev's heavy grappling style offensively would work against Ilia Topuria, but the fact that so many people that I don't consider as good as Ilia have made it so close with Movsar Evloev, and not just grapplers. You know, you got strikers like Arnold Allen, who doesn't really have a grappling background, although he is very good at counter wrestling. He made it so close. I thought he got robbed in that fight. I'm not too amped up about that one. If anyone's going to get the title shot next, it should be Diego Lopez, and I think that's what the UFC should do. Ilia Topuria versus Diego Lopez in March, Volkanovski versus Movsar Evloev in February in Australia. You've already got a title fight on that card. Get Volkanovski versus Evloev on there as well. On the main card, in the feature fight. Could be a 5-round feature fight. Why not? That's what I think should happen next. And then the winner of Volkanovski Evloev can fight Ilia Topuria versus Diego Lopez winner. And then we can talk about title shots. And there's, you know, Oliveira response. Since Islam is going to fight in January and he's not going to be ready for April or May, which is so sad to say, by the way, but that's just a condition that That's the situation that we're in right now in the lightweight division. It's weird to say that, right? He's not going to be ready for April or May. He's going to fight in January, so there's no chance he'll be around 5 months later in May to take on whatever, or 5 months, 4.5 months, whatever it would be. It's sad that that's the situation, but, you know, Islam Makhachev, if he does fight in January, is probably going to be around earliest July. So I get trying to sort of get a fight in against a contender first, but dude, you have your own contenders. Lightweight is its own division. You can't just leave the featherweight division in some kind of limbo for the next 2 years while you're off on this side quest, which may be more exciting than the quest you're currently on at featherweight, but still, you can't just go off on this side mission at lightweight, leaving the featherweight division in a limbo for 2 years, which will have no hype because everyone will be fighting for a fake interim belt when we know Ilia Topuria is the real champion of the division. I don't like this. I love the idea of it. As an MMA fan, I love the idea of it. Ilia Topuria, Charles Oliveira, sign me up. Ilia Topuria, Dustin Poirier, they're all sick matchups. We have to have some order here, man. Dricus du Plessis is, you know, at one point he was saying he wants to move up and talking about the idea of moving up. But then recently he's been saying, you know, I've got a Strickland matchup. And then Chimaev is like, he's openly discussing the idea of fighting his contenders. Which is crazy that is something deserving of praise right now in the UFC. But in the era of the Joneses as champion and, you know, the Merab situation before he eventually did sign to fight Umar, that stands out amongst the UFC champions these days. Defend it a few times. You know? He says he's conquered the division. You conquered Volkanovski and Holloway. Bryce Mitchell's a good win, don't get me wrong. Josh Emmett is also a good win as well. There's other guys there right now. There's really good guys right there. Diego Lopez is really, really good. Evloev is undefeated. Great record. Great name. Evloev, it's a Dagestani-ish name. That'd be a huge win. That would help, in my opinion, sell the idea of a Makhachev fight. Because all we've seen in terms of Ilia Topuria fighting wrestlers is Bryce Mitchell getting him down at the end of round 1 and doing a little better than people give him credit for in that matchup, although he did get finished. I don't think Ilia has a weakness to wrestlers, but I think him beating a guy like Evloev, who maybe would have got past Volkanovski, who knows, would do wonders in terms of trying to sell the idea that he could beat a guy like Makhachev up a division. You know? Seeing him, imagine he goes out there, shucks Evloev off of him a few times and sleeps him out cold in round 1. Which is a likelihood with Ilia because it seems to be what he does to a lot of opponents. Not round 1 all the time, but he seems to sleep people in devastating fashion. That would be great, in my opinion. But then we got the Oliveira idea. We got the, Ilia's a tough fighter, someone who talks the talk and walks the walk. I can see why you would want to challenge people, but I think you have to be very careful when you're coming up to lightweight because it's a very tough division. I think Oliveira is a very difficult matchup for him. I think the fighters at lightweight are way more difficult of matchups for him as well. You know, Dustin Poirier is also an option here. Paddy Pimblett, I think, is not quite there yet. I think we need one more win out of Paddy Pimblett. You know what I can see happening at lightweight? If they were going to do this, it would be Ilia versus Oliveira. I could also see Oliveira being some kind of, he's staying ready for the January card. Maybe they're going to give him the title shot afterwards anyway. Who knows? But what I can see happening is Justin Gaethje versus Dan Hooker. And then maybe a Poirier versus a Pimblett instead, seeing as Renato Moicano has just signed to fight Beneil Dariush. If Pimblett doesn't have an opponent by the time Moicano beats Dariush, maybe they will just make the Moicano-Pimblett matchup. But maybe then Moicano has moved on past Pimblett and is starting to look for his own title elimination bout. So, although there is storyline behind this, I don't think this is the most likely thing to happen right now. I think Pimblett needs one more beyond Bobby Green before we start talking about him against these types of names that are in the pound-for-pound list, that are former champions, and so on and so on. But this is maybe the reasoning. Timing. Ilia Topuria hopes to retire from MMA in 3 years, by age 30. I'm 27. I hope to be out by 30. Smart man. Very, very smart. Forget how... This guy's I think he's like a year and a half older than me, which is kind of crazy now. I remember a time when I was like a kid watching MMA and all of these fighters are some unks. 25-year-old? God, Unk's really out there doing his thing, huh? Now I'm older than the prospects. I don't like it, guys. I hate that. I'm seeing these young kids come onto the scene, 21, 22, 23 years old, ready to make their run in the UFC. And I'm like, damn, dude, these guys are young. I used to think that they were the adults in the room. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a worrying thought. We're all aging. We're all going to die soon. Either way, he's 27, hopes to be out by 30. Smart. He's a superstar. He's got a hell of a following. And in those 3 years, or 2.5 years, however long he's going to have left, he can put together if he wins all of them, he can put together a good enough amount of wins to cement himself as the GOAT. Because let's face it, Ilia Topuria, with the 2 wins that he has right now, and the wins before, Mitchell, Emmett, are great wins. Not championship legacy wins, but they're great wins, solid wins to have that will look good in hindsight when his career is over. But he just beat Volkanovski and Holloway back-to-back. Imagine if he were to, over the next 2.5 years, go through Lopez, Evloev, who happened to beat Volkanovski, who knows? I think Volk would beat Evloev, but if Evloev, it would be a fresh name on his resume, or he would beat a Volkanovski who's proven that he's still got it against an Evloev. So that would be 2 more goated wins to have, and great defenses of his belt. Then he would move up. What if he then did Oliveira, Makhachev, or if he moved up straight away and got a Makhachev on his resume, then got an Oliveira on his resume, and then got another contender on his resume as well. In those divisions, that type of stuff is unheard of in the lower divisions, okay? Especially featherweight and lightweight. To be juggling title defenses and defending the belt at featherweight and moving up and defending the belt at lightweight as well. 2 of the most difficult divisions in the sport. That would be very impressive and probably would cement him as the GOAT. Let's face it. Lopez, the winner of Volkanovski versus Evloev, then Makhachev, and then a defense against an Oliveira. We're already talking about him in the conversation. You know? So he could achieve all that he needs to and more within this 2.5 year zone. But I will say this. Right now in my division, I no longer have the motivation to defend the belt anymore. Now I want to move up a category and we'll see how everything goes. How do you not have the motivation? You know? Like, to me it screams that he's not in this for the fight of it. Which is fair. Not everyone is. And we have to value the fighters that are in this sport for the scrap. I think Ilia was in this sport to get in, get goated, get out, and like start an acting career in Spain. And start this and just be a very popular guy and an influential guy. And try and live the McGregor lifestyle, but without him coming back after the Mayweather fight. I think that's what Ilia Topuria's plan is, you know? One thing I do understand about this, though. We'll get to this in a second. One thing I do understand about, I'm 27, I hope to be out by 30, is it makes you think about time left in people's careers. Time left in Makhachev's career. I think Ilia wants Makhachev so fucking badly on his resume before all is said and done. And he doesn't want to have to go through Lopez, then the winner of a Volkanovski versus Evloev, and then all of a sudden Islam Makhachev has beaten Arman Tsarukyan, and then is talking about moving up to 170 pounds, and then maybe is talking about leaving the sport for good. I think Ilia Topuria wants to get there and get the matchup with Makhachev and earn the matchup against Makhachev before he gets out. I don't think we've got much longer of Islam Makhachev, guys. I don't see Islam Makhachev around for a few more years. I think we're talking Islam Makhachev retiring by 2026. Very likely if he continues to win. Beats an Arman Tsarukyan, defends again against another contender, moves up to 170 pounds. Who knows wins there? I think he might dip and say, I'm the GOAT, and leave the sport. That's what Khabib did. You would imagine it's a similar mindset that Makhachev is going to have, seeing as he grew up around Khabib and is very, very similar to Khabib in the way that he views the sport. I think Ilia just wants to cut to the chase and get there before Makhachev gets out, which I understand. But I think the better road is to do a featherweight title defense and then have both belts on the line in a champion-on-champion matchup. I do rate the idea of him moving up and fighting a contender. It's the lightweight division. You got the featherweight division. I want to understand Ilia here, but I think the UFC genuinely needs to sit him down and say, listen, short ass, you gnome, shut up about moving up to 155, Diego Lopez in Miami in March, and then we'll talk. You put in some work first before we start talking about jumping up a division. It feels like every fighter who's more deserving of jumping up to the next division, they're the only fighters that aren't talking about doing it. Pantoja, we don't hear about him saying, I'll move up to 135. I think he would have matched up quite well against Merab. You know what I mean? As a grappler and a finisher. Maybe he's not as big and Merab would out physicality him. I'm not saying he would win, but feels like the guys who are actually earning the opportunity to move up are the only ones not talking about moving up. If Drickus beats Sean Strickland, he's then going to say, Chimaev, you're next. You know? He might mention the idea of moving up and fighting Pereira, but I don't know, man. It just feels like, let me tell you how it feels. Just a change of scenery here as well. It feels like this whole moving up a division thing, it used to be admirable. Oh my God, they're fighting the bigger opponent. This is crazy. What it has become is a cop-out for a free fight where there's nothing on the line if you lose. Ilia Topuria is the featherweight champ. If he was to move up and fight in a super fight against Islam Makhachev, it's respect for testing himself against a bigger opponent. Then it's Islam Makhachev only defended against featherweights. There's another featherweight on Islam Makhachev's title defense. You know what I mean? It just feels like it's diminished. It's not the super heroic act that it was originally. Instead, it feels like this is a way to get this guy a free title fight where if he loses, he can always go back to being a champion at 145 pounds. It's actually more admirable to defend your belt in your own division than it is to move up and try a super fight, because in that case, you stand to lose everything. If you lose in your own division, you ain't got no belt. You're just back to being a regular contender in the UFC. Unless, of course, you're Israel Adesanya, in which case you'll just get infinite rematches for the belt again. But I don't know, man. I don't know. I know where he's coming from. It's hard to go from Volkanovski, Max Holloway to Diego Lopez. But that's the game, dude. You can't big time your division out of getting their title shots. Lopez is putting a lot of work. These guys have their own careers. You know? Ilia, you main character syndrome gnome. These guys have their own lives and careers that they've been working their entire life for. Okay? You can't just brush them off like, not interested, after Lopez has put his entire life's work into this. You know? And the run that he's been on in the sport, saving events, stepping up, putting on fun fights every single time. You have to consider that other people exist as well, Ilia Topuria. I hate that I have to spell this out to him this way, but it's true. Come on, guys. What are we doing here? And when it comes to if Ilia were to move up and leave the featherweight division, which he has kind of walked back the idea of doing, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, Diego Lopez calls out Alexander Volkanovski after Ilia Topuria said he'd like to move up to 155 pounds. And he says, Alex Volkanovski, if Ilia's going to 155, let's meet in the octagon. You can pick the date and location. This could be on the, this could also be on the Australia card and get it done very quickly. And I'm sure Lopez would step up and take that fight as well. But doesn't this just lose a lot? Imagine if Volkanovski was to return as champion of the featherweight division. Would it be good for his career and legacy? Yes. Would it be good for us as fans, seeing Volk as the champ, knowing that Ilia's up doing a bit of a side mission at lightweight? It'd just feel like he's a bit of a placeholder. It would feel like when DC first got the belt, after Jones got banished from the sport for failing PED tests. Just be a bit of a placeholder. This guy ain't the real champ. It won't get the hype it deserves, these matchups. You know? I don't know, man. I just think it would leave featherweight in some limbo where we would have to just sort of put the division on ice for a few years while we give Ilia everything he wants. Brother, you ain't conquered a division for defending your belt once, okay? We'll go back to this. Stop celebrating because I'm not going anywhere. I have conquered my division and I will do the same in the next one. Volkanovski, defend against Holloway. It's impressive. There's so many names. You've got an abundance of contenders. This isn't a Pantoja situation where we don't know who the fuck he's going to fight next. You have options. Fight the options. Ilia Topuria versus Diego Lopez. And I don't want to see Ilia come back in May. Where's that headline that I just saw as well? Let me go back to it. Since Islam's going to fight in January and he's not going to be around ready for April or May, I would like to fight the number one contender. What are you waiting for? He ain't fought in November. I don't think he even fought in October. I think that was the Stipe Miocic-John Jones card. I believe the Max Holloway fight was in September. It's been a few months already. Why are we waiting until April or May until we see you again? What's going on? You're making me miss Adesanya. Don't make me miss Adesanya as champion. God. I know Adesanya is easy to make a 3-month turnaround when you have shit fights all the time and just low kick at range and have no entertainment whatsoever. But, towards the end he had some fun fights, but that was also around the time when he actually had a bit more time between his fights. Either way, I know Ilia gets scrappy. and he wants some time off between fights. Brother, why are we waiting for April or May? March. Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev main event in Miami. I think that's where they're going to go in March. Miami pay-per-view, UFC 313. Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev main event. Ilia Topuria versus Diego Lopez co-main event. On the February card, in Australia, as the feature fight, 5-rounder, Movsar Evloev versus Alexander Volkanovski. Get back in there in July afterwards, fight again. Makhachev probably still won't have had a second fight. The way to go about this is to not fight a random contender and then still have the belt at featherweight while everyone else just sort of cancels themselves out, and then you're not going to have any contenders after that if you fail your stint at lightweight. The move is to cement yourself at featherweight and go straight to the top at lightweight. If you want to defend then against an Oliveira or a Dustin Poirier, so be it. But I got shit I want to see first, man. Why are we waiting until April or May? Why are we waiting so much? You know, people are saying, oh, he's scared of Evloev and straight running from Evloev. Evloev, I don't think should get the title shot. I know he has a win over Lopez, and I get there's a whole argument, but come on, guys. Stop using logic to make the sport more boring, okay? Ignore logic and give it to Lopez, who gives us entertainment every single time and has been a backup opponent for shit and has been ready to whenever he needs to go, has saved events back-to-back. I don't see Evloev saving no events. Fun fight with Aljo, great grappling seminar and showcase that they put on, but I'm trying to see Ilia Topuria versus Diego Lopez, and I want to see Evloev get a win over a guy like Volkanovski first. That way, when he does get his title shot, he's going to be of name value as well, and he's going to have a hell of a resume, which will make an Ilia Topuria defense against him very good in the first place. I think Volkanovski beats Evloev, but that's what I would do. Fuck off. Shut up, you gnome. Ilia Topuria, Diego Lopez, March. Volkanovski, Evloev in February. I don't know what else is going to fucking happen in the other divisions, but stop all this fucking nonsense, dude. And defend your fucking belt. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching Toodle Pip. Oh my God, it was 27 minutes. Goodbye.